So now I feel a little bit more relaxed because now you can listen to my track on YouTube. But so far what you don't see is the mastering I have done afterwards with this track. Because my journey continued with just focusing on Bitwig and the built-in tools that are available. I always master my tracks, and by always I mean always. So whenever you hear anything coming from me, there are just a few exceptions, you hear a mastered version. And in my opinion this is essential because whoever is there on the opposite, the other side of the channel, will have my track as a reference or listen to a reference and compare it to other tracks. That's why you have to make sure that certain things are in place. In this video I'm just gonna make it short and I will just summarize what I mean by mastering because I have videos already on this topic. On the other hand, I want to show you that those things are possible to do with the Bitwig built-in tools as well. So you don't need any fancy plugins to do so, just to make sure that you have certain things in place, for example like technical requirements, but of course all this loudness everyone is looking for and combines, or when someone thinks of mastering you usually have the loudness war in mind and the loudness itself. So if you don't mind and just want to go to the process how I'm doing this in Bitwig, you can just use the jump marker in YouTube. But on the other hand, let me just show you and give a little bit of background information what I want to do, how I am coming to the points I'm doing in Bitwig in a second. So usually this is the track I was exporting a few days back. Let me just head over to Logic, because in Apple Logic I have here my mastering template. This mastering chain, I'm not saying that it's the reference, but it's at least my reference. So I'm gonna explain you what I'm doing here in a second. This is at least my reference, what I want to achieve in Bitwig. Other people might have other mastering templates or even ideas of what mastering is, but let me show you what I'm doing here. This is the unmastered version, yeah? So I just import this to my Logic template. So I have it in here. Now it's a mixture between certain things. Let me just note this down for you. One is of course talking about loudness. To be fair, right, this absolutely makes sense. Just let me switch over to just text. Loudness, right? So what does loudness mean? In my opinion, it's basically compression, as well as, for example, a limiter. Also, the first thing I'm doing here is just some, I call this technical requirements. For example, I don't need this silence at the end. So I just removed this, right? So I'm gonna add here some fade out. Fade out, let's say 2 seconds. And also the track length I'm reducing because otherwise Logic is exporting me, I think, just too much silence at the end. So let's say also technical requirements like fade outs. Also let's do analysis. For example, equalizer curve, or let's call it multimeter curve. Bass decibel level, at least is my reference. So I'm always checking this one, yeah. So I have here my template, and what's happening here? I'm using Ozone basically for years already. Actually, you see certain models, what is happening here, and it doesn't really matter what that is about. But usually when I listen to my track here, I first of all adjust the dynamics, just that I'm in a certain range, and I just show you how this looks like. So I'm playing here the loudest part of the track and just make sure that a little bit dynamics is being compressed. Then I'm heading over to just any reference afterwards, any loudness amplitude afterwards, and I make sure, or I check what's going on there. So you see there's plenty of headroom, so I can increase the dynamics at the level after my dynamics. Too much? Okay-ish. Then usually I head over to this low-end focus module, and I still have to check how this works, but what is happening here is, let me show you what's happening here, and then I explain you what's going on. So in my opinion, this low-end focus module is nothing more than a multiband compressor focusing on the low-end focus. And either you can make your stuff more punchy or more smooth, which is in the end just a multiband compression setting in my opinion. And you can set this level just how you want. And yeah, usually it works for me, so I have this in my chain at least. Less and less I'm using the Exciter plugin, but you get the idea. There are endless YouTube videos on the topic of exciters, but let's keep this out for a second. And last but not least, it's the equalizer. So now it stops here, but usually I'm looking for a flat multiband image. I'm not saying that this should be like that. So all these rules, by the way, I'm talking about here are no rules. This is just how I'm doing things. But usually I find like a dip in there. So I add a small equalizer curve, which then tops this one. Or maybe I see that the bass already is too much. But still here I'm able to do my final touch. For example, you might say, okay, around 600 kilohertz, it's a little bit too much. So but again, there's not many things I can do here already, because if there are some major issues, I have to fix this in my mix and not in the master. But it's just like you get the idea. Here I get the last check before I send out things. And then you have the maximizer. So the maximizer is just a brick wall limiter, and not just, but with some pretty good algorithms I would expect. Just check out what's happening here. So it shouldn't be the rule that the limiter kicks in and works all the time. This is what the dynamics model should do and the compressor should do. But just with the limiter, you can just get so much more headroom being processed in the limiter. And that's basically my mastering. I'm doing I call this 5 minutes mastering, and that's my track. Also here I'm running my analyzer. Just making sure that everything is in place. And of course, last but not least, here with the Pro Q, I am just cutting around, what is that? 22 hertz, just some basement for the technical requirements. So let's say 22 hertz cut. Let's head over to Bitwig and try to implement the same things. First of all, I make sure that the audio tail is not too long. I just basically cut the region and then do some fade out here. Okay. And also let's implement the 22 hertz cut. Let's do this with an equalizer. I think it's more accurate. At least I know what's happening here. Yeah. The type is not a belt, but it's a low cut, the hardest you can get. Fade out, check. 20 hertz kilohertz cut. Okay. Then let's have the compression going on. Compressor. Also use the fancy I was switching to this view because here I can see just the master leveling up from minus 18 dB to minus 12, and you see some peaks going into the minus 6, if not even above, beyond. Yeah. So let's add the limiter. It's too much. Now I'm trying something I haven't done before, but I would love to use the multiband compression and see if I am able to do so. This is cool. But why is it so noisy? I didn't discover this before. I mean, this noise you can handle with noise gates, etc., but That's really dope. But to be honest, you can't really compare the mastering chain I've done in Bitwig with Ozone, or if you compare it to SSL compressor unit you have maybe in your rack or maybe your Fruity Loop setup, doesn't really matter. Most important is you need a process like this to have it by hand. And if you have the tools that are available within Bitwig, that's fine. You see, you can get some decent results, but it's more about the process of doing things. I'm using Ozone for almost 16 years and I'm not using it like very in depth, but I'm having my routine, how I'm using this tool. And on the other hand, I see with Bitwig, just if I go to point 0 and look what kind of tools are available, I was pretty impressed just while recording this video. I found out this, I just discovered this multiband VFX3. That's amazing. Yes, I know I can do this with other tools and some plugins I even might have installed on my computer, but that doesn't really matter. It's really about everything you have there. So I hope I could trigger something in you and you think about your mastering chain, how things could look like, as simple as that. Make sure that you always master your tracks and subscribe to my channel. That's all I'm asking you for. Talk to you soon. Bye.